Have you ever sat at the dinner table and noticed dad is quiet, almost watching the family from a distance, rather than being part of the conversation? It's not always anger or indifference. Sometimes, silence is simply a sign of something deeper, something families can bring back to life if they notice early enough. When you think of a father or husband sitting quietly in his chair, it's easy to assume he's relaxed or simply tired. But very often, that silence is carrying something heavier. For decades, many men are trained to believe their worth comes from providing. Even if the children are grown and retirement has arrived, that deep identity doesn't just fade. It lingers in the background like a shadow. When a man feels he is no longer contributing financially or in the same way he once did, he may quietly question his value. It's not that he doesn't love his family, it's that he fears his role has ended. Think of it like a strong bridge that carried traffic for 50 years. When a new highway is built, the bridge is still standing, but fewer cars pass over it. The bridge hasn't lost its strength, but it begins to feel forgotten. Fathers often experience the same. Their stories, their wisdom, and even their presence are still solid foundations. But if they no longer see their importance reflected back from family members, they can retreat into distance. This is the weight they never mention, the fear of becoming invisible. Families sometimes misread this silence as detachment. They assume he doesn't want to talk or isn't interested anymore. But in reality, many men hold back because they don't want to burden others with worries or appear weak. They grew up in a time when talking about stress wasn't considered acceptable, so they carry it quietly instead. Unfortunately, that very act of protecting the family from their feelings can create a gap. What was meant as love shows up as distance. This is where small gestures matter more than grand conversations. Asking for advice on something simple, how to fix a drawer, how to plan a budget, or even how he handled a similar situation years ago, can lift that weight. It reminds him that his experiences are still valuable. Even listening to the same old story with genuine interest becomes a signal you're not forgotten and you still matter. At its heart, the weight fathers carry is about identity. They want to know that beyond the paycheck, beyond the long career, their presence continues to hold the family together. When families see this unspoken truth and meet it with reassurance, the distance begins to shrink. What they need most is not sympathy, but recognition, an acknowledgement that they are still the steady roots of the family tree, even if their role has changed. The habit of withdrawing rarely begins in old age. For many men, it starts early in life, shaped by lessons that were never spoken but deeply understood. From a young age, boys are often told, "Be strong, don't cry, figure it out." Over time, this becomes second nature. Instead of reaching out for support, they learn to retreat inward whenever life feels heavy. By the time they are husbands and fathers, this pattern is already deeply set. When challenges arrive, health scares, financial uncertainty, or simply the loneliness that can come after children leave home, the familiar response is to step back rather than lean in. Think of it like a well-worn trail through the woods. A man might know there's a shorter, sunnier path nearby, but out of habit, he chooses the old one, even if it's darker and more difficult. The same is true for emotional withdrawal. It may not be the best path, but it's the one he knows. The silence, the sitting apart, the shrugging off of questions, these aren't necessarily signs of not caring. They're signs of a coping method he has used his whole life. Families often misread this withdrawal as rejection. A wife may wonder why her husband won't open up. Children may think he's uninterested in their lives. In truth, many men don't even realize how distant they appear. They believe they're protecting loved ones from worry or sparing them from problems. To them, pulling away feels like a form of love, even though it creates the opposite effect. This is where gentle persistence can make all the difference. Instead of pressing with demands like, "Why don't you ever talk to me?" a softer approach works better. "I'd like to know what you think," or "Your perspective would really help me." These kinds of invitations remind him that his voice is wanted. Over time, they can loosen the grip of old habits. Breaking the cycle of withdrawal doesn't happen overnight, but small steps add up. Shared activities, like a walk after dinner or even watching a favorite show together, provide openings for conversation without pressure. What matters is creating spaces where a father or husband feels safe enough to step out of that old pattern. At its core, withdrawal is not about indifference. It's about habit. When families see it for what it is and respond with patience, rather than frustration, they give fathers permission to unlearn the silence and rediscover connection. When the rhythm of family life changes, it can feel like both a relief and a loss. For many fathers, their sense of identity has long been tied to being the protector, the coach, the problem solver, the one everyone leaned on daily. The years of driving kids to school, fixing broken bikes, or staying up late to help with a project weren't just chores. They were quiet affirmations of purpose. Then one day, those routines begin to fade. Children move out, careers wind down, and suddenly the role that once gave them direction is no longer required in the same way. That shift can feel like losing a piece of themselves. It's a bit like an actor who's played the same part for decades. The curtain comes down, the stage empties, and even though the applause was warm, there's a strange emptiness when the lights go off. The performance is finished, but the heart still longs for the role. Fathers often find themselves in that same silence after the stage of everyday family duties has dimmed. What others might see as freedom, they may experience as disorientation. This feeling of loss isn't always spoken aloud. Instead, it shows up in small ways: longer hours spent in the garage, sitting quietly during family gatherings, or avoiding conversations where they once would have offered advice. It's not that they no longer care. It's that they don't know where they fit. The role they once mastered has changed, and they haven't been given a script for the new one. Families can help by creating space for new forms of connection. Traditions don't need to end, they just need to evolve. Maybe instead of coaching Little League, Dad becomes the one who teaches a grandchild how to fish. Instead of being the driver, he becomes the storyteller on the ride. Even something as simple as inviting his opinion on a decision, whether about finances, home repairs, or life choices, sends a message that his wisdom still matters. These gestures remind him that while the role has shifted, the value hasn't diminished. The truth is, roles do change with time, but purpose can be renewed. What feels like loss can turn into a new chapter of influence and connection if the family recognizes it and invites him back into the circle. Distance softens when fathers realize that while the stage may look different, the family still needs them in the spotlight of their lives. It's easy to overlook how much technology shapes family dynamics, especially when everyone seems glued to their screens. For fathers, this shift can feel like a quiet competition they never agreed to join. A man who once had the family's full attention at the dinner table or during a weekend outing may now find his voice drowned out by buzzing phones, endless scrolling, or conversations that get cut short because someone is checking a notification. It isn't usually anger that makes him go silent. It's the sense that he's being outpaced by devices that never stop demanding attention. Picture a grandfather clock standing in the corner of a living room. Its steady ticking has marked family time for decades. But now imagine that clock trying to compete with the flashing lights and endless pings of modern gadgets. The clock hasn't changed. It's still reliable, still grounding, but suddenly it feels old, fashioned, unnoticed. Many fathers feel the same way when screens dominate family spaces. Their wisdom and presence remain steady, But in a world of instant updates and quick entertainment, they can feel outdated or unnecessary. This quiet competition doesn't only affect older generations. Even adult children may not realize how often their father's words are lost to a distracted "oh, huh," or half-hearted nod. Over time, that lack of engagement teaches him to retreat. Why share a story if it will be interrupted by a text? Why start a conversation if it has to compete with a screen? The distance grows not because he doesn't want to connect, but because he doesn't want to fight for attention. Families can bridge this gap by setting aside intentional, tech-free spaces. It doesn't have to be dramatic, a half hour after dinner where phones are put away, or a weekly walk without earbuds. These small rituals signal that human presence takes priority. Even inviting Dad to share an old story while everyone listens, without devices in hand, can feel like a powerful form of respect. It's not about rejecting technology, but about balancing it with presence. The surprising twist is that many fathers enjoy technology too. They may love learning to video call grandkids or explore hobbies online. The real connection comes when families invite them into the digital world instead of letting it replace them. By blending tradition with modern tools, sharing photos together on a tablet, watching a game online as a group, they stop being silent competitors and become part of the conversation again. Unspoken regrets often sit quietly in the background of a father's life, shaping his moods and silences in ways that family members may not immediately notice. These regrets can take many forms: missed milestones because of long work hours, harsh words spoken in moments of stress, or choices made decades ago that still echo in his memory. Unlike younger generations who are encouraged to talk it out, many men were taught to hold those feelings inside. Instead of sharing the weight, they lock it away, hoping it will stay hidden. But the truth is, regrets have a way of seeping into daily interactions, making a man seem distant even when he longs to be close. It's a bit like carrying a small stone in your shoe. At first it feels manageable, something you can ignore. But as the years pass, the stone presses harder, shaping the way you walk without you even realizing it. Fathers often carry that stone in silence. They may laugh at family gatherings, but inside they are measuring the moments against what they feel they missed or mishandled. Families sometimes mistake this quietness for disinterest, not realizing it may come from fear of opening old wounds. A father may avoid certain conversations because he worries about judgment or because he believes it's too late to change the past. Yet what he most needs is not solutions, but reassurance that his presence still matters more than his mistakes. This is where small invitations can become bridges. Instead of asking directly about regrets, which can feel overwhelming, families can create safe spaces for storytelling. A gentle question like, "What was your favorite part of raising us?" Or, "What's something you'd do differently if you could?" can open the door without pressure. When those stories are met with patience and empathy rather than criticism, a father begins to see that even the painful memories can lead to connection, not distance. The beauty of addressing regrets is that it allows families to transform them into lessons. A mistake from years ago can become guidance for a grandchild. A missed opportunity can inspire a new family tradition. By listening without judgment, children and spouses help turn regret into wisdom and silence into dialogue. In the end, unspoken regrets don't have to remain walls between fathers and their families. When acknowledged with compassion, they can become stepping stones toward deeper understanding, proving that connection is always possible, even with the past still in the room. Reconnection often sounds like it should be a one-sided effort, as if families just need to pull fathers back into the circle and everything will be fine. But the truth is more nuanced. Many fathers who seem distant are not withdrawing because they don't care. They are stepping back because they don't want to intrude. especially as children grow older and begin running their own households. A father may believe the respectful thing is to give space. What families interpret as absence is sometimes his way of saying, "I trust you to lead your own life." That's why reconnection has to work in both directions. Imagine a porch light. It shines steadily, but it doesn't chase anyone down the street. It waits, ready to welcome, but it won't force itself on anyone. Fathers often see themselves in that role. They want to be available, but not overbearing. The risk is that the family misreads the quiet light as distance, when in fact it's waiting for an invitation to shine more brightly. This is why small gestures from family members can be so powerful. A phone call that begins with, "Dad, I'd love your advice," or an invitation to join a family game night tells him that his presence isn't an interruption, it's a gift. When he sees those doors opening, he's more likely to step through. But it's also important for fathers to recognize that holding back too much can unintentionally create walls. Silence meant as respect can look like indifference. Reconnection works best when both sides stretch a little, when fathers take the risk of speaking up, and when families extend the invitation to listen. One of the overlooked parts of this two-way street is forgiveness. Children may need to let go of old frustrations, and fathers may need to forgive themselves for imperfections. When both sides practice that grace, the road between them feels easier to walk. Reconnection doesn't always come from grand family reunions or dramatic conversations. Often it's found in consistent, ordinary exchanges. A shared meal, a walk around the block, or even a text that says, "Thinking of you." The beauty of treating reconnection as a shared responsibility is that no one feels the burden alone. Fathers no longer carry the weight of being the only one to reach out, and families no longer feel abandoned. Instead, they meet in the middle, where trust, respect, and affection naturally grow. That's where distance fades and belonging is restored. When husbands and fathers grow distant, it isn't the end of connection. It's a quiet signal that they're waiting for the family to meet them halfway. Rebuilding closeness is less about grand gestures and more about steady reminders. You're still the heart of this family. What about you? Have you noticed moments when a father or husband seemed far away, and what helped bring them closer again? Share your story in the comments. Your experience may be the encouragement another family needs.